product market fit within the government is still product market fit, and it's not dissimilar from commercial product market fit. So if you're really, really pushing and people aren't wanting what you have,
you don't have product market fit.
Yeah. It's kind of a tough shit situation.
Yeah.
Or build something that they do want.
This is All Quiet on the Second Front, a podcast where boring conversations around defense tech and national security come to die. Join me, Tyler Sweat, and my Second Front homies as we dismantle the mundane and cut through the bureaucratic bullshit to demystify the world of defense tech. But be warned, this is not a typical government podcast. Are you ready to get weird?
What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of All Quiet on the Second Front. I'm your host, TJ Rowe. We've done quite a few customer spotlights over the past year, but really excited for today's conversation. I'm joined by John Conafay, founder and CEO at Integrate. Our mission at Second Front is to deliver technology to our nation's warfighters and national security ecosystem. No better use case than Integrate deploying across the Space Force today. John, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. Wouldn't be here without you, frankly.
Yes, well, I appreciate that. It was a lot of hard work for both of the teams. Before we jump in, tell us a little bit about yourself. You've been in the space industry now for north of a decade,
Yep.
Decade and a half.
Yep.
What's that journey been like?
Pretty epic, gotta say. It's I think there are various types of dopamine chasers out there,
Yeah.
and you definitely find them in the space industry. It's one of the things that drew me to it. You have to have a massively high risk tolerance to want to not only jump into the space industry, but jump into early stage startups, like I have only experienced over my career. So I was in consulting with a total badass who taught me multiple total badasses that taught me a whole lot about federal contracting, kind of a master class right out of school, post Air Force career, and then got picked up by Astronis Space Technologies, building micro geo telecommunication satellites. It was like employee number 8-ish there, and that was a hell of a ride. And then went to spaceflight, which brought me up to Seattle to put a whole bunch of small satellites onto large rockets. And I think the first day that I joined spaceflight is when SpaceX said, that's our business model with the transporter model,
Yeah.
Transporter missions. And dynamic is the euphemism of the century for that first day, for sure. It was a interesting place to be. And then got picked up by ABL Space Systems, now long haul technologies for missile defense, which seems to be a pretty hot topic these days.
Yep.
And was about employee number 50-ish at ABL, led business development, sold to Amazon Kuiper and a number of other commercial customers. So last two jobs selling rockets, also interned at Spire Global back in the day. So that's, $3 billion space companies. It's been a hell of a journey.
There's something special about being surrounded by true masochists professionally.
Yes.
And there's something that you've said in the past that resonated with me. That was, I came to the space industry for the technology, but I stayed for the people. As you got into the Integrate founding story, and I also, have a ton of respect for a fellow revenue leader in the business development world out here slinging hardware and software. But how did you identify the pain point of building difficult machines for high-risk missions, what that project management workflow looked like to say, hey, we need a better product to accomplish this?
For sure. Initial, real crux of the idea, the pain was felt while I was at Astronis, frankly. I think I was dealing with 180 different suppliers, all giving me either, mom and pop shops that could only build one type of FPGA or something like this, giving me PDFs buried in emails, other suppliers giving me tables in emails or sending Microsoft project files over anything. And then we had, Jira and Smartsheet and all of this, and then some conglomeration of a Google sheet that I kludged together with Google Script, and all of this. And it was chaos, which the majority of hardware companies are. They're all grown up and have an entire pier in San Francisco now. But that's really where I experienced so much pain while I was also doing business development and procurement and supply chain and all this. And then I got to spaceflight, and we had hundreds of satellites for, tens of customers on multiple different missions and multiple different rockets. And there were about 3,000 tasks, milestones, requirements, and all of this for each satellite to integrate them to a single vehicle. And the schedules are always moving to the left and right. This beautiful concept of launch chicken, which made everything spectacular, which is, my satellite's going to be ready. Your launch vehicle going to be ready? Sure, my launch vehicle's going to be ready. When did you say your satellite's going to be be there? And it's just this impossible situation. So we had to deal with all of these customers who couldn't see each other's milestones and all of this, but also had roll-up milestones for the actual launch that they should be able to see. And I was like, this is bad shit. We're using Jira and Smarts, the same stack that I've used at every single hardware company that I've worked at. And there's no way to communicate this directly to our customers in a way that didn't feel like we were stuck in the 80s with Microsoft Project, which started in, I think, before I was born. Yeah. And so I really started ideating. I was like, how do we get this mission management aspect so customers can feel like they have a custom portal experience? Meanwhile, we see the entire picture in one place. And that's where the crux of Integrate started. And then I went to ABL Space Systems, saw the exact same issue with mission management. I'd codify a contract in PDF, send it over to our launch managers. They'd extract all the milestones, put them into Jira and Smartsheet and JAMA, communicate some of it through JAMA, but not all. And it was just this cluster constantly. And I saw the problem time and again at Spire, and then Astronis, and then Spaceflight, and then ABL. And it was like, okay, I think we got a quote from Salesforce. It was like $2.5 million to institute like this master plan. And I was like, GFY, we could go build a company for that.
We can do this.
Exactly. And so, $5 million raised and a $25 million Space Force contract later, and we did.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I mean, obviously, I think the best products when founders build them are when there's a market pull and you've seen the pain point over actual years of development. And then you've got, I think right now, maybe two very interesting trends in the space industry. The first being the commercial space industry is probably the most velocity in any relatively new industry. Frankly, pretty new over the last 15 years. And then the second is you have a lot of these providers, commercial or government funded, that are starting to vertically integrate more deeply. And maybe that's a business model, but also maybe it's a way to address some of the pain points of, hey, we can't launch a mission without 180 vendors across software and hardware and sensors and integration. So as that trend kind of continues, and you've talked before about building for the ambitious machines. Yeah. Ultimately, that's what we're doing. We're putting ambitious machines in orbit and into space. What does that mean for Integrate kind of today as you're supporting each of those customers, both on the commercial and the defense side?
Absolutely. You hit on 2 points that are really hot topics internally, and it was vertical integration of software at these large companies, and then what an ambitious machine is. Because my co-founder Andrew Sloan is our VP product and design, just a phenom, and he came up with the 4 ambitious machines because that's who we're building for, was my take. And he was like, no, for the actual machines that they're building. So we've hotly debated, it's like, is it the people or is it the actual things that they're building? And I'm like, definitely the people. It's like definitely the machines, but it's very much both. And then on the vertical integration side of things, there has to be a common language between customers and suppliers.
Yep.
And it has always confused and confounded me when companies have been like, we're going to build our entire software stack vertically. And I was like, why? Because we're
that your core competency?
Exactly. Is it your core competency? Is it where you want to take the risk and maintainability and all of this? And also, what happens when your customers come knocking with a need and say, hey, we're using this software, so you will be using this software, which is what we're seeing with the Space Force now. You know, it's not, I'm not going to throw around the requirement word or anything, but a number of Space Force contractors have received emails saying, hey, this is what we're using to organize our launches. We'd love it if you hopped on board. And it's not a small customer to come knocking.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens when you receive that email? Is it consternation? Is it screw this? I don't want to start a new or learn a new software, or is it this is our customer? We have to acquiesce. And so I think there are going to be a lot of really interesting conversations, especially in the multiplayer world, which is our multiplayer project management software for the world's most ambitious machines is our tagline.
Yes, I love it. To get into some of the product discussion, and there's a lot of interesting, call them hot takes around dual use technology or dual use software. And some of them are valid, but Integrate is one of the purest examples of dual use technology that I think, interestingly enough, 10 or 12 years ago, if you were building this, it would be almost exclusively for government. Like it would be pure defense or space use cases. And in just a 10-year time frame, this is now a very viable dual use product. So as you got into kind of the design phase, the build phase, the deployment phase, how do you think through architecting a great product where end user feedback, user-centric design is top of mind? You're building for these people who are building the most ambitious machines on the planet, but you're going to be deploying that product for commercial companies, for the Space Force, for a variety of different defense use cases. What does that look like on the ground floor building that?
Yeah. Really, really good point. I've had a lot of hot takes on dual use. With the exception of weapons,
mm-hmm.
I don't understand what dual use means because it should be dual use. I conceptually, I get it.
It's all dual use.
Exactly.
Yeah. A pen can be dual use.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or a toilet seat, or not to push any buttons with the $10,000 toilet seat. And I think there's this idea within commercial companies that you have to acquiesce to every whim of the government or every requirement of the government because they're the biggest customer, and if you say no or push back, then you lose a major customer forever. And we've not had that experience in the slightest. I've experienced it at every one of these companies because we've all done defense work and government work, where there's this hesitancy to push back or not say, I really don't think this is what you need. And ultimately, it's always been the best decision to collaborate with your government stakeholder as you would any
customer or partner.
Exactly. Yeah. And so we got to a really, really great place with our customer because I've seen this a million times. And they were asking for specific, not to be pejorative, but doodads that would have taken us off course. And it was like, okay, is this more important, this major feature that's actually core to your business, or is this thing that's going to distract,
shiny feature for one person? Yeah.
And our customers at the MMO, absolutely spectacular. They predicted this Hegseth memo of buy commercially to a certain extent, or felt like they predicted it because they bought exactly as I think our government should.
Yeah.
Not just being on the receiving end of those dollars, but
which is refreshing to hear.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. From an efficiency standpoint, but it did take a lot of education on both sides.
Yeah.
So when I think of dual use, commercial is always going to have faster feedback cycles. They give us feedback in days, not weeks or anything like this. And we don't have the PCS problem with commercial, where people come in, learn a job in 3 months, and then they're gone in 18 months, potentially. So commercial tends to know the product that is necessary for pretty much the same things that are being done on the government side. When we explained that to our government customers and said, if you want to get the most powerful software fastest, you have to trust us, and we have to follow the commercial roadmap. Obviously, there are some non-negotiables that we can build into this for you, but they have to be in line. Otherwise, we don't have a commercially viable business. And then we're fully dependent on you, and nobody wants that.
Yeah. And you, as the government, you want us to have a commercially viable business that de-risks the future of this product.
Exactly.
Yeah.
100%. So really having that conversation, pushing back, frankly, and then them pushing back on us, and just having a really healthy, open dialogue was worked.
This is such an important topic that I want to click into, that is the relationship with your government customer. And I think what we hear most often, and we've experienced ourselves, is that the government's a terrible customer. And that is the most common talk track you'll hear from especially startups, but a lot of technology companies that work with the department or the broader public sector. But you've had a starkly different experience with your customer. Why is that?
Yeah. I made a bit of a snarky post, I don't know, like a year ago, that was like, the government will come get what they want.
Yeah.
Product market fit within the government is still product market fit. And it's not dissimilar from commercial product market fit. So if you're really, really pushing and people aren't wanting what you have,
you don't have product market fit.
Yeah. Kind of a tough shit situation.
Yeah.
Or build something that they do want, or, and that sounds very, very high horse, but I saw it at Astranis, and I saw it at ABL, and I saw it at Spaceflight. When the government knows what they want, and then they'll come and get it.
Yeah.
And our stakeholders were very, very clear in their needs, which has always been the case. I don't know if I just have some weird, completely off the rails relationship with the government that's completely not standard, but they generally know what they want. You have to listen and communicate with them and talk about what's actually within the realm of possibility. I fully agree that there's a world where the government needs to stop imparting requirements, because commercial industry can come up with solutions that they might not have ever imagined, and this like nitpicking over 2 miles on a 450-mile requirement for a joint strike fighter or something like this leads to billions in cost overrun, because you have to hit this weird sort of thumb in the air requirement.
Yeah, we could wax on the requirements generation process, I think, for hours here.
Yeah.
But there's kind of an important point in there that in any business, commercial, defense, or otherwise, you can't get to product market fit without the proper persona definition, identification.
For sure.
And what you guys did was identify that very clearly from the start. Yeah. And I think we see this with a lot of dual use companies and even defense pure companies, is that ICP definition is still pretty fuzzy. They're kind of iterating towards product market fit, but they don't have the persona like truly locked down, which then unlocks the feedback loop that you would get. And if it's an outlier, I'm sure there's some credence to, hey, this is SSC, this is going to be one of the most, if not the most technology forward, technology driven organizations within the government. And so you might have pockets around the Department of Defense or different agencies where that's not the case. But within Space Force, like, this is a technology driven agency.
Exactly.
Full stop.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. The ICP definition and getting like more and more and more honed in, because we started in mission management, we started in pure space play, and we've kind of nailed that persona. But about a year into the company, we were like, I love space, everybody loves space, but what we really built was a technical program management platform that can be used for automotive and energy, and any complex hardware that exists can use our platform. And it's probably much better for us and the Space Force and all of our other customers to de-risk across all of those technologies. So yeah, our ICP definitely evolved, but we had that core use case, and we kind of called our shot from the beginning. We were like, we know this is useful for this ICP and can be for these. So we've kind of locked in that initial one and are moving on to more of the TPM ICP now.
Yeah, and that makes a ton of sense. I do want to talk a little bit about your founder journey. So you obviously identified this pain point. There's pull for this product capability before you wrote the first line of code. You launched the business. What has the founder journey been like? I mean, you have a background in go-to-market, which is, I think, a differentiator in its own right as a founder in this space.
For sure.
But now you're running product, you're running engineering, you're running the team and talent, fundraising, and you've talked a little bit about kind of your role in understanding your relationship with risk. And what does that mean from your seat today?
For sure. You can work with all of the great founders you want, and none of it will compare until you actually get in the hot seat.
Yep.
Full stop. It's, I worked directly for the founders of Astranis, directly for founder of Bryce Tech, directly for the founder of ABL. And I thought I had a clue, and I thought I understood every single step.
I know how to do this.
Yeah, exactly. And to some extent, I absolutely did.
Yeah.
If I had not had those experiences or been so close to the action there, I think I would have been absolutely fucked.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And at the same time, anything that I was kicking and screaming about while I was there working for them and didn't have my ass on the line fully, wouldn't even make my list of top 75 risks and frustrations and things to work on and all of this. Like it's just different when it's your ass on the line and you're the one that has to make these hard calls and set the standard. And you can look over your shoulder all you want. And I have two spectacular co-founders, Kelly Higa and Andrew Sloan. And now we have a really spectacular director of engineering in Duffy Frey, amazing head of operations in Holly Fox. And we have these spectacular people.
But it's on you.
It's on me, but it also took a lot to get there and to understand where our standard was. And it turns out our standard is absolutely sky high. And it's not fun to discover that as you're realizing people that might not necessarily make the cut there, so we call it new baby syndrome for every founder in the beginning. The first 6 to 12 months, you might be riding every high or think everything's the worst thing that's ever happened, and then you identify your relationship with risk. And one of the riskiest things we did, I don't know if I should say this, was we did not have the direct to phase 2 locked down before we started paying you all. Yeah. And we were anticipating it, and we'd raised a $970,000 pre-seed round, and we gave you some chunk of that to say we want to be able to hit the gas immediately when this is awarded. Obviously, government didn't direct us to do that, so it was like okay, I'm signing this. Let's see. Let's make sure this works out. And it did spectacularly. Yeah.
With risk comes reward.
Exactly.
And especially in this business or in any highly regulated business, you knew at the outset, we're going to have to make this investment in security and compliance one way or the other for our product to be consumable by this end user. And it's easy to look back in hindsight now that that was the right decision, but at the time you don't know, is that phase 2 going to come through, or now we're going to wait another year for material R&D contract opportunity. Now you've made a cash outlay in a very lean early stage business. It's terrifying.
Absolutely terrifying. And I was talking to another founder the other day. There are a lot of moments where you feel like you're just limping back to safety with a knife in your teeth, and it's invigorating. The posted something about one of my the people on my team. We went out to a bar to celebrate once we signed the contract, and after everybody had gotten up, he was like, step 1 damn near killed you. And I was like, nah, man. Like, it really didn't. And I thought there was going to be a recovery period, or that because it was a lot of work. Like, I'm not going to bullshit about that. Yeah. I got on the other end of it, and I was like, that was the right amount of work. Because it was a lot, and then you just get back to it, and you're like, cool, done, let's go. Next mountain, next hill.
That's it. Yeah. We made it to the next level.
Exactly.
And now we're going to survive again.
Yeah. And thrive. This is our time We have all the opportunities for shots on goal in the commercial market. We have all the opportunities to make sure that this customer is just effusive about how much they love the solution and everything. Let's grab it by the throat and make sure we take every advantage of every opportunity we've worked for.
All gas, no brakes,
All gas,
all
no
the time.
brakes. Exactly.
There's a thread there, though, that I think I even see a lot of founders today in defense or dual use that are a little bit more risk averse. And not saying right or wrong, like there can be different answers for different solutions, but you come from a background of risk. Like the space industry is riddled in risk. We are taking very, very sophisticated technologies, strapping them to rockets and then shooting them, if it's GEO, 36,000 kilometers away from Earth. Is there something you learned there on kind of risk taking, or something that founders can kind of take from the space industry that's a good lesson in building and maybe being a little more risky than you otherwise would be?
Yeah, I don't think I've met or known a single founder that hasn't been within inches of death, figuratively.
Yeah.
And the ones that have...
Yeah, there's not a single startup story or successful enterprise business without a near-death experience.
Oh, yeah.
Or many.
Absolutely. Exactly. And, you take the example of SpaceX. It was self-funded. That's really spectacular. And you had a second or third time founder who had kind of assessed his tolerance for risk. And but it wasn't until the fourth launch that they were able to actually say, okay, we did it. And they were or third or fourth launch. So that's the one that everybody knows. And
it continues today, right?
Yeah.
Like how many Starships launched 8 times this year?
Another, yeah, exactly. And then another, Rudd just yesterday.
But that's the goal.
Yeah.
Like break it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Make sure where our limits are, test where our limits are. And that is, there's the no Bucks, no Buck Rogers in the space industry, which is more like an argument for business development and an industry heavy or an engineering heavy industry. And I think there has to be some analog to, well, it's no risk, no reward. Because if we hadn't gone with second front, if we hadn't gotten over our skis, and I mean, we were leaning, I could probably touch the front of my ski.
Yeah.
We're leaning so far over. We wouldn't have been able to deliver for the Space Force as quickly during that phase 2 as we were, have them fully operational 2 months after we started the phase 2.
It's incredible.
I mean, and talk about a butt bucker moment,
Yeah.
when I signed on the dotted line, gave you all a chunk of cash, and was like, here we go.
Let's get deployed.
Yeah.
Now that you've been through this cycle and you've kind of gone through, call it the 0 to 1 phase, and even a little bit beyond that, as you look back on the last 3, 4, 5 years, what advice would you give to yourself as a founder on day one? Or what advice would you give to founders today who are launching products and businesses?
10x your initial thought process for everything, for every single thing. 10x your expectations of your team from the beginning. If you are settling on any higher, don't do it. 10x your revenue expectations of yourself. There is not a single world in venture capital or in this business where thinking small helps. At all.
You have to be completely unreasonable.
Exactly. 10x your expectations of yourself. I was great at drinking before I started this company and loved it. Had a great time. And I got to a point where I was like, I have to eke out every single bit I have inside me to make this work, and to make sure that I didn't leave anything on the table. In every single decision. So stopped drinking, started working out, and I was telling one of our board members yesterday, I was like, I was fucking born for this. I'm in better shape, lower weight, and happier than I have ever been in my entire life. and I don't think a lot of seed stage founders can say that.
No, like this was a health journey for me.
Exactly. Yeah. I want to find my upper limit, and I'm not there yet. And but every single day I wake up, I'm excited to get there, get closer to it.
Yeah, and the substrate there is that, especially in the early stage, and we experience this as well, time is your most precious and valuable resource.
Absolutely.
Every minute counts. Every hour counts. You only have enough in the day or the week, and that adds up over time, and it compounds if you do it the right way.
Yep. Absolutely. And I think Sam Altman said something like this. It's like all of the hard work you do earlier on, you get greater compounding effects. So take all of the big risks early on. Take that job at a startup that you have no clue whether it's going to make it, because you'll learn 10 times more. Burn yourself out 100%. A few times. Like do the thing. Burn yourself out a few times. Expect 10x more out of yourself than you otherwise would. You have to, because at some point your body and your life and everything is going to tell you when you have to slow down, and you want to get as much possible, as much learning, as much juice out of every second that you can as early as possible, because it just has compounding effects.
Yeah, that's why I joined Second Front originally. Yeah. Like I joined a few months before we launched Game Warden, and I spoke with Tyler and Enrique and Peter and the crew, and they said, hey, we're going to build this platform and we're going to productize the ATO process. I was like, that's an insane idea.
Yeah. But
it sounds awesome. And if we can even get some of this right, one, we'll have a great impact on defense and national security. But two, personally, selfishly, I will learn 100 times more than I will in any other role in any other company that's not that early stage.
Absolutely. And you get to touch everything. It's, you're CRO, and you've probably done every other job to a certain extent in the company.
At one point or another, exactly. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's forced perspective. It was literally on the side of a mountain with a bunch of founders some months ago when we were talking about, what makes us intrinsically motivated? Like because I truly believe at this point there are intrinsically motivated people and extrinsically. And we want to hire intrinsically motivated because it's less management. They produce better work. There's like this sense of pride. And we were talking about past trauma and fucked up shit we've all gone through and all these things, which was, deeply cathartic. And we kind of came to the conclusion, it's not trauma, or it's not hard things that we've been through necessarily. It's forced perspective.
Yeah.
And there's no greater way to force perspective if you want to be a business person, the greatest engineer you possibly can, whatever it is, than a startup and these near-death experiences that you go through, because you don't ride every wave after you realize that you will make it out, even with these near-death experiences.
Yeah, scarcity and pain can create the best results that you can't even imagine.
Absolutely.
To wrap things up here, what does the future of Integrate look like? You're crushing it with the Space Force. You've got commercial customers. You are solving a really hard problem for folks who are solving the hardest problems. So what does the future of Integrate look like?
Absolutely. Every government agency, every service branch utilizing Integrate, not just in their four walls, but to truly get to these JADC2, to these, cross interoperable, massive systems that need
Golden Dome.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, if we're talking about integration services and everything, you need transparency to move as fast as we need to for these things.
Yes.
And Integrate, I am absolutely positive, is the only way to get that. And then, of course, I mean, if we were not leaning hardcore into artificial intelligence to become the source of truth for programs and projects, and to have an additional teammate that is Integrate on your team, I would not be doing my job at this point, because it's here to stay, and we've hit that inflection point. So as naturally as saying, what am I supposed to be doing today in Slack? is your interaction. Then we have our core power users who use the UI and all of this and produce a lot of the data. Yeah.
That's incredible. Well, John, thank you for the time today. Thank you for being an early believer in us. We only exist because of companies like yourselves that are disrupting the technology baseline across the Department of Defense and elsewhere in our federal government. So thank you for all the hard work that you and the team are doing, the trust you've placed in us, and we're excited to keep scaling together.
Thank you. Couldn't have done this without you.
Thanks, brother.
Cheers.